President Trump pausing tariff threats against Canada and Mexico hours before the levies were supposed to take effect. On X, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wrote that his country will reinforce its border with the U.S. He said Canada will appoint a fentanyl czar, list drug cartels as terrorists, and launch a joint U.S.-Canada team to combat organized crime. Joining us now, former Canadian Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. She's running to be Canada's next Prime Minister. Thanks for joining us, Chrystia.
Great to be with you, Steve.
So can you help us understand what happened? I've got two stories in front of me today. One is that the Canadians and the Mexicans gave in to President Trump's demands. And then there's a story in the Journal today that says President Trump didn't really get very much. From your perspective, what actually was given by each side?
Well, from my perspective, Steve, what happened is common sense prevailed. You know, the Wall Street Journal was absolutely right in saying this is the dumbest trade war in history. And markets sent a very strong message yesterday. They said this will be bad for the American economy. And we heard the same thing really basically from everyone who has anything to do with the U.S. economy, right? We heard it from the chamber, we heard it from manufacturers, we heard it from the aluminum sector, we heard it from the farmers, we heard it from blue-collar workers, we heard it from the steel workers. Everyone said, this is a really bad idea because our trading relationship with Canada is mutually beneficial. And then I think you guys got the message that Canada would retaliate. And that is very important to be clear about. You know, our country is more united around this than we have been in living memory. We want a great relationship with you guys. We think we have a great relationship with you guys. But if you hit us, we will definitely hit back, and that will make a really dumb idea even dumber. So I think at the end of the day, what happened was American capitalism worked. The U.S. stock market sent a powerful message. I'm grateful to American capitalists for being smart, for sending that message.
Right.
And I'm glad that message was heard. But the threat is still there. It still lingers.
Right.
And that's a really bad thing for Americans and Canadians.
Our understanding was that you were disappointed in Prime Minister Trudeau's placating President Trump. Are you disappointed in his response yesterday and what he appears to have given President Trump?
Not at all. Our whole country right now, every single person is absolutely united. We are totally supporting the Prime Minister in the great work he is doing and the great outcome that we had yesterday. And what we really need now is to get to a place where the tariffs are definitively off the table, because as long as that threat is hanging there, it's bad for everyone. It's bad for the U.S. economy. It's bad for U.S. workers. It's bad for U.S. businesses. It's bad for the car sector. So I think what we all really need to focus on is we need to say a good result yesterday, and now let's move this totally off the table and get back to an effective, mutually beneficial relationship. You know, Ronald Reagan said about the Canada-U.S. relationship that it was the most productive relationship between any two countries in history in the world. He was right.
Chrystia, we've had a lot of, our president has discussed a lot this issue of the U.S.-Canadian trade deficit, which we had a discussion this morning, one gentleman talking about the goods deficit. I threw in the trade and the services, trade and goods and services together at about $40 billion in 2023, plus or minus something this year. How significant is that in your mind in context of the whole relationship, a $40 billion trade deficit? Do you agree with President Trump that Canada's been unfair to the United States?
No, absolutely not, Steve. Look, the reality is our trading relationship is balanced and mutually beneficial. And if you exclude energy, if you exclude oil and gas, electricity from that trade, then it is basically balanced. In fact, some years you guys run a surplus with us. Now, I think you are really lucky that Canada is the country that sells you oil and gas and electricity. We are a much more reliable supplier than, say, Venezuela. And the fact is, particularly with AI, America's needs for energy are only going to increase. So I think you should be saying to us, hey, Canadian friends, thanks a lot for being such a great partner. Thank you for being a reliable democracy, a NATO and NORAD ally that is going to help us have the energy that we need to dominate in the AI space. And I will also say, Steve, that, there is a danger here for the U.S., and that is, Canadians are really angry. This has been a weekend where basketball games, hockey games, the U.S. anthem has actually been booed. I do not remember that in my lifetime. We feel hurt. We feel betrayed. We will retaliate if we have to. But, we want to be your friends. We know that this relationship works. And, you should be glad that you have us as a reliable energy supplier. As finance minister, I got a pipeline built to the West Coast for oil. We do have alternatives. We prefer to be your ally and partner, and for that to be the foundation of North American economic and national security. But you're making it hard for us by threatening to punch us in the face.
Yeah, well, that's exactly, Chrystia, where I wanted to go there. You mentioned how united and unhappy Canadians are about this. Now, with the Trump administration's relatively hardline trade stance globally, there's been a lot of talk. European allies are thinking about trying to, disengage a little bit or find alternative trade relationships. Same thing with China, Mexico. Is that, and you said Canada has options. Is that really something that seems like, this is a signature moment where Canada will look to become a little bit less integrated economically with the U.S., or is that even possible?
Well, look, Steve, I really want to emphasize I'm an optimist. I believe a win-win outcome is possible. And I'm not like a crazy Pollyanna here, because I was foreign minister responsible for the Canada-U.S. relationship during the first Trump administration. And you will remember there was a lot of rhetoric, there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of shouting, not nice things were said. But at the end of the day, we got to a great place. We got to a new trade agreement, the USMCA. President Trump said it was the best trade deal ever. And Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats backed it too. So I really want to emphasize for everyone, the fundamentals between our two countries are very strong, are mutually beneficial. And I think we can get to that. But I would say to Americans, don't take Canada for granted. You are lucky to have us as your neighbor. You're lucky to have us as your energy supplier. The fact that we are your NATO and NORAD ally and are a safe and prosperous country all along your vast northern border is foundational for America's success in the world. So please remember that. Don't punch us in the face, and we can have a good deal.
Chrystia, I have 30 seconds. What happens 30 days from now? Tariffs or no tariffs?
We are going to be fighting very, very hard for a no tariff outcome. And Steve, I hope you and U.S. business leaders will fight for that too, because it makes sense for both countries.
Chrystia Freeland, thanks for joining us this morning.
Great to be with you.
When we come back, we will get you set for another big day in the markets. The futures this morning, at least at this point, are a bit of a mixed picture. The Dow futures are still off by close to 90 points. S&P futures have turned positive, up by just over a point. The NASDAQ indicated up by 27. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box, and this is CNBC.